Nichelle Polston, to you.
Well, I want to shift the discussion to education, gentlemen. Delaware Governor Jack Markell has said the state is saving money to keep the Race to the Top proposals going past its expiration date. Do you believe there should be continuing federal programs on education? And also, this is a two-part question, what is the best approach to help families who struggle to put their children through college?
And Mr. August, I believe, has the first response on this one.
Oh, thank you very much. I am for, well, right now, we have the largest student debt bubble getting ready to hit us. It's $1 trillion. I would like to know why our kids have to pay so much for their education. And then when they get the education, they get out of school and have to spend themselves paying off that debt. Now, we send our kids to college for our future. And the present system, how it's set up, is corrupt and immoral. We're not letting our children learn to support themselves. We're putting them in debt. So I'm for total public funding of higher education like we do for public elementary and high school education. That's our answer. So everybody's got the opportunity. If they want to go to school and they qualify for it, it's paid for, because the benefits we get from that as a society in the future outweigh any benefits of this money that they have to pay.
Thank you, Mr. August. Mr. Kovac, to you.
Nichelle, education is one of the most important issues facing our country today, so we'll get the answer in a minute to one of the most important issues facing our country. The Fed should set minimum standards. It shouldn't apply and require us and bribe us to apply an Illinois model in Delaware, in Smyrna, in Clayton, in Edgemore. We need to have local control. The Fed sets minimum standards. It sets a floor. It sets guidelines. We're wondering why our education system is not moving in a positive step forward as considering and compared to the rest of the world. But yet the Fed dictates the inputs, and we don't get acceptable outputs and then wonder why. We need to give that control with qualifications and with minimum standards to the local schools, give that power to the principals so they can make the adjustments they need for their local schools. College funding. College funding has gotten out of control. And I think that's been made worse by government backing of student loans because there's no responsibility. You have the increase of costs.
That's time, Mr. Kovac, but we'll bend back around on this, certainly. Congressman Carney.
Earlier this summer, I took a trip out to Silicon Valley and visited a lot of the companies out there. And the main reason for our visit was to find out what they needed to be successful in creating jobs in the country. You know what the number one thing they said to us? They need highly trained people, software engineers, electrical engineers, and they can't find them here in the United States. And so our educational system, at a time where we have unemployment 8% across the country, lower here in Delaware, you've got employers who can't find people to do those jobs. We need to make sure that our students coming up in school today have the skills that they need in science, technology, education, and math to be able to go on to higher education, to get advanced degrees, to take these kinds of jobs. College education expenses are out of control. When I graduated from an Ivy League school, it cost $7,000 or something like that a year. It costs $50,000 a year, and kids are coming out of those schools with $20,000, $30,000 or more $1,000 worth of debt. We need to make sure that we protect federal investments in education because the future of our country is at stake.
That's the time, Mr. Carney. Mr. Guesty.
There's nothing in the Constitution that says the federal government should be involved in education whatsoever, and I believe the Department of Education should be closed down. With regards to things like Race to the Top, these top-down initiatives don't work. I talked to a recently retired teacher who said when Race to the Top started, they had 4 superintendents in their district, and now they have 8. And she was still taking money every week out of her own pocket to give the kids the supplies they need to do their schoolwork. So if the federal government's going to help at all, what they need to do is they need to, give a block grant, not to the state, down to the local school districts, and let the parents, the principals, and the teachers decide how the money's going to be spent. With regards to college education, it's so expensive, I agree with Mr. Kovac, it's because it's subsidized. I mean, it's not difficult to get money for college whatsoever, and the college institutions know it. So they raise their rates higher than inflation every single year. So the government involvement is driving up the cost of education, and in my opinion, it's not making it any better.
I'd like to give you each another minute on this before we go to our break as we hit the halfway point. Mr. August, clearly you're in the middle of a thought on the situation with student debt. Do you equate this on some level with the fiscal cliff we talked about before? Have we hit a crisis point from which coming back will be a difficult
Yes,
situation?
Absolutely. The student debt crisis, probably will have to be totally forgiven. There's just no way that these kids are going to be able to pay the money back. I know, as Widener's law school here is, Hickenlooper was cost, for other law schools that I've seen, $120,000 to go to a law school. There's an abundant I'm sorry to say this, like every other field, there's a lot of lawyers out there that are looking for work. I had them down on the occupation site helping us out. And that also, too, is the education about the software engineers. I know at least 10 software engineers in Delaware looking for work. There's just no work available for them because they bring outside workers in and exploit them for their labor cost. So the problem is this. We're either going to support our education and get the monkey off our kids' back so they can get to help being productive in society, or we're going to keep them enslaved and debt slavery, which is our main problem with this. We got kids working in McDonald's that should be out there doing environmental work.
All right, that's time, Mr. August. Thank you very much. Congressman Carney?
Yeah, I'd like to agree with Mr. Jesse on the point that college and university costs are out of control. I disagree that we ought to allow kids, young people and their families to be on their own. I agree with President Obama. We ought to challenge colleges and universities to keep their costs under control, create incentives in the system. He talks about a race to the top for higher education, to create incentives given how much federal funding is in university research, as well as student loans and student support, to challenge colleges and universities to keep their costs down, their tuitions down.
What we've heard is, get more federal involvement in now higher education. I think that's completely unacceptable. The problem has been when the federal government has gotten too involved and backstopped these loans and allowed the colleges to charge more and more because the government is backstopping these outrageous student loans that people are obtaining. People make a decision to go to school. They have to get student loans to do it. I'm still paying off student loans because I made a decision to go back to law school. I know what that decision is like. We need to reform that system. We need to make sure that people can afford to get that education they so desperately need. But more importantly, we need to create a system of jobs. We hear 8% unemployment. It's more like 16% underemployment. In addition to that employment, those college students don't have an opportunity to pay off their debt because we're not creating a system where we are allowing our private sector to create the jobs we need. We heard Mr. August say there's plenty of people looking for work. We're not lacking of qualified employees. What we're lacking in is jobs. We need to focus in on both aspects of that problem.
And Mr. Gessie, to you.
It seems like we all agree that costs need to go down, but we don't want to recognize that when you subsidize something, costs always go up. And until we cut these subsidies and stop handing out money to everybody who wants to go to college, we're going to have a problem. I'm not saying we should cut it out completely. We should eliminate student loans. But what we need to do is we have to set a higher standard on who's going to get those loans. We shouldn't just be handing them out to people. People who want those loans, they should have passed their SATs with a high rate. They should really be in need. We shouldn't just be handing out because, as I said, the colleges know that money's there. And as long as they know it's there, they're going to continue to raise their rates. And we have this idea that everybody, if you're ever going to make anything out of yourself, you have to go to college. I know a lot of people who haven't gone to college who have made something out of themselves and made very good living. So we need to get rid of that persona as well.